Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Deborah King. I am Senior Philanthropic Gifts Advisor at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, where we've been serving Burbank and the surrounding communities for more than 76 years with a mission to serve all, especially the poor and vulnerable, and a promise to know me, care for me, and ease my way. Providence is one of the top hospitals in the nation and regularly receives accolades for our specialties and our expert care. We also have one of the busiest emergency departments in Los Angeles County. So busy, in fact, that we have outgrown our current facility and have launched a $78 million campaign to build a brand new state-of-the-art emergency department and urgent care facility. In light of the current pandemic, this project is more necessary than ever. One of the groups that we have formed to help us accomplish our goals is the Real Estate Committee, which is a group of experts in residential and commercial real estate, as well as tax and estate planning. Our three panelists today come from this group, and they all have a similar charge in that they work with clients and donors to help them achieve their financial and philanthropic goals, but each of them comes at it from a slightly different perspective. Bob Bowne has managed a boutique law firm in Burbank for 22 years, where he helps middle and high net worth individuals and families focusing on estate planning and administration, charitable gift planning, estate gift tax, and tax-exempt organizations. Bob helps his clients navigate the best way to accomplish their financial goals, and often that includes philanthropic gifts. Then we have Joe Ward. Joe is Executive Director of Planned Giving for Providence St. Joseph Health Foundations, and Joe has spent 26 years helping people who have an affinity for an organization find ways to support that organization that also benefit themselves and their heirs. And then we have Julie Lyle Nesbit. Julie is Executive Vice President and Executive Director of Whittier Trust Philanthropic Services Department. Julie advises high net worth clients on issues such as formalizing their philanthropy, strategic grant making, and involving the next generation in charitable giving. In short, Julie helps her clients identify their philanthropic goals while drawing in their families and helping their families to be stronger and closer and more connected in the process and in the future. And it's Julie who will lead us off today. Julie?
Thank you so much, Deborah. And I have to tell you, I think as with each one of us who are on this call today, we all have a personal connection with Providence St. Joseph's. I have a very personal one where a member of Providence really helped me with a mother who was seriously in very serious trouble. And she's doing great now, and I owe a lot of it to Providence, so thank you. And so a little bit about me and about Whittier Trust. Really, Whittier Trust is a private company that handles about 40 clients who have very high net worth. And we've been doing this since the 30s. And from a philanthropic standpoint, we've been doing it since the 50s. So a long, long time. And, you know, really when you boil down all the stuff we do for our family, in the end of a generation, what we are doing is transitioning the family, both their wealth and their values from one generation to another. And so there's some experiences I can share and some things that are pretty consistent, and there's some things that are not consistent. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about some of the things as advisors that it took me a while to figure out, and I thought it would be interesting to share with you. Number one I would say is everybody is better if they're philanthropic, if they're giving in some way. And that's whether it's the individual, the family, the community wins, and candidly, the advisors win as well. And I think what you're going to see in this presentation is how you can make it so that all those parties win are much better off because of structuring something properly. And so what I'm going to do first is talk about three areas that I find are similar. Well, every individual is different, every family is different, their goals, their wealth situation is different, but all families seem to have these three things that they think about, that they focus on, and they worry about. And the first one is really their wealth. You know, am I going to be, and that really boils down to, am I going to be okay? Do I have enough to sustain myself and the lifestyle that I have? Will I have enough to take care of me if I get sick? And this really, it's amazing whether people are worth $1 million or $135 million. they worry about it a lot. And we've seen this with the pandemic, that people are really, really concerned. And so what I would tell you is every one of them does worry about this, and it doesn't matter how big they are. So if I do give, $100 gift, $1,000 gift, $1 million gift, how's it going to affect my life, my lifestyle? Second area they worry about is their families. And, so are they connected? Are they together? Are they grounded? Can they take care of themselves? Am I going to be passing enough money to them? Am I sharing my values enough? How do I help enrich that and grow that? And am I doing the things that I need to be doing for them and for their future as it transitions to the next generation? And if you look at the third area, is really what I find, and particularly as people have lived a full life, they're really in their second phase of their life, they start to think about, what does this all mean? What brings me joy? How am I happy? Am I helping my community? Am I doing things that make me feel fulfilled? And I think when you see some of the scenarios we talk about, and if we go to the next stage, I will argue that there is a best outcome where when you put all three of these together the right way, you can actually enrich each one of these. And actually the advisor wins as well in this. And so if you go to the next slide, I think what we're going to try to summarize is, how we can show using tools that are just not cookie cutter tools. Everybody knows the donor advised fund, and people tend to kind of put things in there. But how can I really achieve all these things? And I'm going to argue that you can do some things with some of the tools we're going to talk about to protect your wealth, and primarily in the area of saving taxes and also diversifying your financial interests so that you're not highly at risk. And, so you can maintain your standard of living. The second one is really improving the quality of the life for your family as a group. And by giving together, I can tell you unequivocally that the family grows together and they are joyful together. And there's a lot of things that the next generation learns by giving and being involved in charitable endeavors, including empathic thinking and gratitude, which is really the basis for happiness. So it's very important. And the third thing is we can talk about how you can build a legacy and do all this. What we view of when we look at a family's wealth, we look at it in two components. There's tangible wealth and there's intangible wealth. The intangible is not the money, but rather the health, the healthiness of the individuals in the family, the healthiness of the connectedness of the family, and are they all self-sustaining, those kinds of things. And we look at this intangible wealth as a huge factor in transitioning the material wealth, because it won't sustain if the other part isn't healthy. I think to summarize it, the fate of your estate is very clear. You're going to give a big chunk of it away for most of you. And so are you going to give it to taxes? Or are you going to give it to some place you really want to give it to a specific charity or to causes that you care about? And the purpose of today is to talk about how you can keep the one on the right where you really give mostly to charity. And I will tell you this is doable. And we're going to run through a few scenarios where this happens. And I work with a lot of estate and planning attorneys in my role. At Whittier, we always interface with attorneys and CPAs and other advisors. And what I can tell you is my experience with Bob Bowne has been amazing. And specifically why, as you will see when he talks, he cares about his families deeply, deeply. And it'll be very apparent when he talks about it. But second, he understands a multitude of tools that you can use depending on the family's financial situation. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Bob Bowne and let him talk through some scenarios. Bob?
Thank you very much, Julie. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this panel. Julie herself is an incredible advisor to her clients, and has done a great job of really finding that home run experience where you're able to provide excellent tax and financial planning advice with outcomes that can benefit charities and greatly enhance families. And as you heard, those are really wonderful goals that we can, in the advisor role, bring together in really dynamic ways and create unique opportunities for our clients to achieve some wins that would never have been possible in other contexts. So I'm going to share with you today couple of examples that are real life examples in our practice where we were able to come alongside some families and individuals, utilize some charitable planning tools that really enabled them to achieve some remarkable financial goals, but also some incredible charitable planning opportunities that enhance their lives in really unique ways. And that is really where I get excited to realize that we're not only doing great work for our clients, but through these vehicles, we have an opportunity to do great work in our community. So the first example that we'll be sharing with you today was a client that was a lifelong UPS employee. He was a delivery driver for UPS for the better part of 30 years. And he came to retirement and had amassed a significant amount of UPS stock. In fact, it was worth about $3 million. This stock had a basis of approximately $90,000. And upon retirement, this gentleman was concerned about the fact that all of his wealth was in one company. And as much as he loved UPS and had great loyalty to that company, from a financial planning standpoint, the need to diversify his portfolio what was important, and he certainly understood that. The advisor that he was working with, a financial planning advisor, was also obviously aware of that. And they had been talking actually for a long time before his retirement about what they were going to have to do upon retirement to minimize some of this risk. And what they were not excited about was simply liquidating a big chunk of this stock, incurring significant capital gains tax liabilities, and then diversifying with what they had left. And so as we discussed some charitable possibilities with this particular client, we realized the opportunity to use a charitable remainder trust would create a really unique chance for him to achieve all of his goals in ways that far exceeded what he thought was possible, and also exceeded what the financial planner that he was working with thought was possible, and resulted in a charitable gift that carried on and will carry on for generations to come, but also enhanced this gentleman's life remarkably in his retirement years. And so we'll get to some of the specifics of how we work this out with this particular client. In the next slide, you'll see the layout of the gift that he chose to make. In this instance, again, he had $3 million worth of stock. As I mentioned, he loved UPS. He wanted to maintain a significant position with them, so he maintained $1 million of that stock with UPS. He then made a gift into a charitable remainder trust of $1 million of his stock. That gift avoids capital gains taxes because it's gifted to a charitable entity. So that charitable remainder trust, one of the beauties of them is they're actually a tax-exempt entity. And so sales by those entities avoid capital gains taxes. And so when we're dealing with, in this situation, significant capital gains of federal and state rates blended, especially here in California, we're talking about a significant amount of wealth that would have been lost to that tax. In this instance, it was close to $225,000 of tax that would have been lost. By giving it to the charitable remainder trust, that the charitable remainder trust is then able to liquidate that stock, again, without the capital gains, diversify that position. So the full $1 million of stock positions are now available to provide an income stream to that donor. In this instance, the donor received an annual average of just under $70,000 of income. This income stream is far in excess of the dividend stream that he was receiving from the UPS stock on that $1 million of value. And he really looked at his lifestyle based purely on the income stream. He was not someone who was comfortable invading the principal. He wanted the income stream. And so by utilizing this gift, he was able to significantly increase the income that he received in his retirement years. It also gave him a significant charitable deduction. The charitable deduction that he received was close to $350,000. With that charitable deduction, this employee then sold another $1 million of stock. It was a taxable sale. He owned it personally, but the tax liability that he incurred on that sale, he then was able to utilize that charitable deduction to offset that taxable event to effectively eliminate his tax burden there. So he was able to effectively liquidate $2 million of stock to diversify, which was what his goal was, and avoid the capital gains tax liabilities and the payment of the tax on that would have occurred on both of those events by utilizing this charitable remainder unit trust. That, just on a financial basis, was an incredible victory. The financial planner was now able to have a full $2 million of available funds that they were able to continue to serve as the financial planner managing the assets within the charitable remainder trust. And when we create these through Providence St. Joseph's, financial planners are able to continue their role as the person managing those funds. And instead of having a fund that is now reduced by the size of the taxes that have to be paid, they have the full value of those funds that they're managing and continuing to provide their services through the trust for the benefit of the client, as well as the charity. So in that sense, again, the advisor actually achieved something that the advisor would not have been able to achieve in this situation, not to mention the donor that received significantly greater income and a great tax deduction as well. But perhaps the most exciting piece of this is where you see all three of those sections that Julie was talking about come into play, is the idea that this donor was able to work with the charity about creating a scholarship for needy families. And he really wanted to focus on families that he felt were kind of like himself, that didn't have a lot of access to funds, that were perhaps, as he viewed himself, more blue collar. And as he thought about the possibility of creating an educational opportunity for families and individuals that wouldn't have otherwise had it, through this significant gift that he made to this charity, it gave him a sense of meaning and purpose in his life and his retirement years that he would have never experienced otherwise. And so his annual meetings with the recipients of this scholarship, and to hear their stories about what they were able to achieve through the education that he helped provide them, you can't quantify the level of satisfaction that he experienced. And again, so this is a situation where you see this sort of incredible confluence of financial benefit, tax benefit, income improvement, lifestyle improvement, and then significant charitable impact in the society at large. And as the advisors, when we're sitting there with our clients, the ability to share these opportunities with our clients really allows us to experience that home run as the advisor. Some of my happiest experiences as an estate planning attorney are when I can share ideas with clients that then go into effect, and you really realize the tremendous benefit that your experience has been able to provide these clients to sort of unlock some of the unused potential of capital and community benefit that really would not otherwise be available. So it was an exciting experience. We'll kind of run to the next slide and just sort of recap some of those highlights of what occurred in this trust. Again, we used a charitable remainder unit trust. There's two primary types of charitable remainder trust. It's a charitable remainder annuity trust and a charitable remainder unit trust. We'll go into the distinctions between those a little bit more later. But effectively, a charitable remainder annuity trust gives a fixed income dollar stream per year, and it's fixed from the very beginning of the creation of the trust. Whereas a charitable remainder unit trust allows the corpus of the assets that are being invested to grow or diminish, and then it is typically valued on a yearly basis, and then the percentage that's being paid out to the donor, that income stream, is then fixed on that annual basis, so that if the advisor is managing those funds and they can grow the portfolio larger, then the donor can receive a larger sum based on that fixed percentage on the larger sum. And so in the UPS example I just shared with you, we utilized that charitable remainder unit trust, and the financial planner was able to manage those funds, grow those funds, and increase the amount that donor was able to receive, even above what we'd initially projected. And so a couple of other things that come to mind when we're thinking about, as advisors, scenarios like this that we want to be on the lookout for, where a charitable remainder trust might be a great option to consider. Another example would be a liquidation event. You have a small business owner, and many of us have clients like this that have run a successful business, small business for decades, and there's an opportunity where it's being purchased by another entity. And so this stock that many times effectively has a zero basis is now going to be purchased for a significant amount of money. And this opportunity to utilize charitable remainder trusts in these scenarios can be really dramatic, the benefit that can be achieved. The UPS example, that donor was the person receiving the income stream. With these charitable remainder trusts, that doesn't have to be the case. It can be a spouse that receives that income stream. It can be a child that can receive that income stream for a fixed period of years, up to 20 years, typically. So there's a number of different variants of this planning tool that can really be tailored to really perfectly arrive at the goals of each client. And every client's needs are different, but really what we're wanting to do through this presentation is to share with you these ideas so that you can be bringing them to bear and thinking about them with your own clients. And ideally, if you do see some scenarios that play out with your clients, you can reach out, and you can reach out to Joe here, who will be speaking a little bit later about another example that he had as a planner. But Joe has over 2 decades of experience, as Julie shared, in doing exactly these types of planning experiences with clients. And he's a tremendous resource to call on to be able to run through projections of different ideas and different scenarios that may work, so that when you do have a chance to converse with your client, you've got some great vetted scenarios that they can consider that could help you achieve, again, that home run experience. But so this liquidation event scenario would be another one to be thinking about. That family business owner that's being bought out. Any really business sale scenario is something that you can be thinking about this. We're looking for ideally highly appreciated assets. And again, the link here is that through this charitable remainder trust, we avoid the capital gains tax liabilities that would otherwise incur on this sale. If you have the sale of a significant business asset that's being sold, piece of property, and again, Joe will get into an example that covers just that type of thing, but you could have a piece of significant industrial business property that's been owned as part of the business that's no longer needed, that now is going to be sold. And many times those business properties are owned individually by the business owners for income tax purposes, and many of our accountants that are watching this probably have many experiences with that scenario. And so again, if you've got a scenario where you've got a sale of the entire business or a significant asset of the business that is highly appreciated, again, charitable remainder trusts, as we're discussing here today, are going to be key considerations for you. This is another example where we are discussing a situation with, in this instance, it was a widower who had just gone through a rather prolonged illness with his wife. They've been married for many years. His wife sadly passed away, but his experience at Providence St. Joseph's was profound. He found the level of care from the doctors and the nursing staff to be extraordinary in every regard. And he felt, and his entire family felt, such an incredibly strong connection to Providence through this experience. And as he and I discussed his future and what that would look like, he expressed to me some things that he was looking for. He had a house that had appreciated significantly over the years. This was a house that he had used some inherited funds to purchase. It had been maintained as his separate property, so that even though his wife had passed away, he didn't get a normal step up in basis, which would have happened with community property assets. But this house was now too big. He didn't like the idea of living there alone. He wanted to downsize. But again, we're now facing this scenario where we've got a significant capital gains tax liability that would occur for that sale. Again, the house was purchased for about $200,000. It was worth about $3 million at the time. And so we started to talk about some of these different options. He liked the idea of having income. He was used to living off dividends and CD rates. We are in a time similar to now where CD rates are very low. And so for clients that have a desire to live off of income, that's becoming more and more difficult. Bond rates are very low. Income rates and liquid assets are almost non-existent. Having something where you can maximize income and get an income rate of 5 or 6 or 7% annually, again, is really an incredible scenario. And that was really what this gentleman was facing as well. And so what we ended up doing in this situation with this widower is he ended up giving half the value of the home. And again, you're seeing in these instances with the UPS employee and this widower, in both instances, they didn't give the entire asset. They gave a portion of the asset because they wanted to utilize 100% of the proceeds of the portion they kept for either their own purposes or for something else that was not going to necessarily be part of that charitable gift. But by making the charitable gift was able to significantly diminish, if not completely eliminate, the tax liability that would have occurred on the sale of the portion that they kept for themselves. And so you'll see that tool. I think that's really important as advisors to be aware, because I think a lot of donors think when it comes to charitable planning that it's sort of an all or nothing scenario. And I think that keeps a lot of people from moving forward with gifts to charities of significant amounts. And I think it's important as advisors to realize this can be scaled perfectly to achieve what each client's best outcome is. And so in this scenario, this gentleman gifted half the value of his home to a charitable remainder trust. And again, then there was a sale that occurred where the charitable remainder trust sold the half that it was holding, and he sold the half that he was holding. In a very similar way that played out with that UPS driver, the full amount of the gift to the charity was then able to be realized without capital gains taxes. Capital gains taxes were incurred on the portion that the widower sold on his own. But again, the deduction that was created, which was a significant charitable deduction, was able to effectively eliminate his capital gains tax liabilities on the sale of his own portion. And then that created a significant amount of income that was able to go to him. And in this instance, it was, again, close to $75,000 of income that he was then able to use to pay his living expenses moving forward. He was then able to take the remaining funds that he had scale down into a smaller home that he felt was more appropriate, that provided some additional levels of potential future care if that was necessary, on a one-floor basis so they didn't go up and down stairs. A lot of things that from a lifestyle standpoint made it much more sense. And again, he had this significantly increased income source that he didn't have before. In this scenario, again, we sort of look at those lifestyle goals. We have enhanced and increased income. We have significant charitable deductions, which helps eliminate other significant capital gains tax liabilities. And again, if the situation just stopped there on those financial benefits and income lifestyle enhancements, you'd say, great, that was a great scenario. But in this scenario, again, we were able to bring in this charitable component, work with Providence St. Joseph's to create a very unique and personal charitable benefit that began to get played out. In this instance, the widower and his family just felt a really strong personal connection, again, to the nurses that cared for his late wife. And what they were able to do was, when working with Providence, they created a scholarship that effectively is endowed, so it will go on in future years, and in fact has, that would provide a source of funds for the nurses at Providence St. Joseph's to get further education and skills to enhance their ability to love and care for the patients that come through the doors of Providence St. Joseph's. The widower, during the remaining years of his life, was able to be part of that process, reviewing applications and then meeting recipients that had received the scholarships, having luncheons afterwards with prior recipients of the scholarships to hear stories about how that education changed their ability moving forward to care for new patients and enhance their life, enhance their income. and created tremendous connections and meaning between this client and the Providence nursing staff. And then, as Julie had mentioned, the idea where you've got many times an instance where family connections are deepened. It's exactly what happened here. The children of this gentleman were part of this planning experience, and they were part of the scholarship review panel and part of the luncheons that were meeting these recipients of the scholarships. And this client has since passed away, but his children have continued this legacy and are now also able to partake in this each year, where they're meeting prospects for this scholarship, and they're meeting with prior recipients of the scholarship. And again, it has created amazing meaning, an incredible connection, an incredible benefit to our community. Quick review of some of the technical aspects of this charitable planning tool. Again, this was a charitable remainder unit trust. The technical aspects of this type of unit trust is called a flip net income charitable remainder unit trust. And really what that meant is that you're transferring an illiquid asset like a house into a remainder trust. And the trust has different terms that then will spring into effect upon the sale and liquidation of that asset. And again, we were able to avoid significant capital gains and receive a great charitable deduction, and then create a significant amount of wealth for the charity as well that received the balance of those funds upon the passing of the donor. Again, I wanted to kind of highlight a few scenarios. I've had clients that have had little used vacation homes or multiple vacation homes, and one of them is just sort of sitting there. It's highly appreciated, not really needed anymore, not used anymore by the family. And so again, you have an opportunity to use all or part of this asset in a charitable remainder trust, and create this significant income tax benefit, and also create some of these amazing opportunities for charitable benefit down the line. Again, we've talked about gifts of commercial or industrial business real property. Those would be other examples that you would be mindful of. Again, Joe Ward is going to be sharing an example right after my wrap up here, and he'll get into some more details of a very typical scenario that we see as advisors that you'll want to be on the lookout as well. On the flip side, we have some of these scenarios where we come in contact with clients or people that weren't aware of these options, and they take steps that result in significant taxes. And unfortunately, we sometimes hear about them after the fact. And we've had a recent scenario that played out with a longtime Providence volunteer, and you see in this example on this slide, she was in her 80s. She purchased her home for a very small amount of money, $30,000, now worth $1 million here in Burbank, needing to make a move into assisted living, really wanting to maximize her income stream that would be able to pay for her monthly care in the assisted living facility for the rest of her life, however long that ended up being. And unfortunately was not aware of this planning tool that we've been discussing. And so she sold it on her own, incurred the capital gains tax that was a significant hit, and obviously then had far less funds available to then utilize to pay for her care for the rest of her life. And we as advisors, we like to minimize these scenarios where we have people that we're associated with, either our clients or other people that aren't aware of these planning tools, and so pursue options that are far less advantageous than would have been available if we're able to sort of achieve these home runs. It's a big reason why we're doing this webinar, why we're wanting to provide some of these tools to you as advisors. And for many of you, you may be very familiar with them. And if that's the case, great. For many of you, this all may be new. And so again, these are ideas and planning tools that are tried and true. This is not cutting edge IRS questionable scenarios. These are things that have been going on for decades, and the IRS, they've been fully vetted and approved. And as advisors, we can have great levels of confidence when we provide these options to our clients, And again, in these instances, we can many times be that hero that is able to help those clients achieve lifestyle enhancement, estate and gift tax and income tax planning benefits, and tremendous satisfaction that comes from improving your community through a significant charitable gift. And so with that, I am going to hand the virtual baton over to Joe Ward, who's going to share a couple other examples with you. Again, Joe, as was introduced by Deborah in the beginning of our webinar today, has over 2.5 decades of charitable planning experience. He's an expert in this area. He can discuss with you all of these scenarios. He can run projections financially with you. If you have questions about different types of tools that can be used or how these would actually work with your clients, given the certain assets that they have, he is really a tremendous resource to our community. And I would encourage you to make sure you keep his contact information. And if, as we're discussing these things, you have examples that are popping up in your mind, which is exactly what we hope is happening as we're sharing some of these examples, he's the guy you want to reach out to and connect with, as he will be able to walk you through some of these scenarios. So with that, I will pass it over to Joe, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I really do hope that everybody watching this does take me up on this, that I am a resource to you. Like Bob said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm happy to answer questions and provide information for you, to run illustrations, which can sort of give you a ballpark idea. If you give me a donor's or one of your clients' ages and the asset value, the cost basis, fair market value, I can show you and sort of walk you through how this works. So if it isn't something that you're comfortable with, I'm happy to walk you through that. And if it is something you're comfortable with, I'm happy to walk through different scenarios and share my experience with you on this. The conversations that I have with our prospects and our donors are very much like the conversations that you're having with your clients. We're talking about, what are you trying to accomplish? And then we sort of show different roads of how you can get there. And a lot of times people can do much more than they ever thought they could and get different benefits and much larger benefits than they ever thought they could as well. And I think that, looking at this scenario that we're going to go through here, and I think what you've seen in the other scenarios as well, is that these are win-win situations or they don't happen. So we're very transparent in all of these discussions. There's never going to be a situation where a charity is really going to make out in this situation and the donors are going to be left high and dry. And the reverse doesn't happen either. So this is something where it's less of a solicitation and really more facilitating and educating folks that this is something they can do. And it really does get back to those 3 circles that Julie had brought up at the beginning, and we're really looking for that sweet spot in the middle. And what I call it is the joy of giving. And a lot of times when I'm having these conversations with individuals or couples, I'll stop in the middle of the conversation and just say, hey, if this is not giving you joy, I know it's like that, I don't remember her name, but the whole, when you're organizing your home, does this give you joy? If this gift doesn't provide joy to you, if you don't feel the love when you're doing this, then we should stop the conversation. Something's wrong here. Let's back up. This really fits with this particular couple here. So you're looking up here, it's another flip charitable remainder trust that we're going to be talking about. I met this couple, Phyllis and Renee, actually, age 78 and 82, and they own several properties. So they'd been landlords for many years. They'd owned one for 40 years and several for 30. Their whole lives had sort of revolved around being landlords. They loved their tenants loved them. They did little wine and cheese tastings with them on the rooftops, once a week at each one. They were there on site. And so this was really something where they'd both been going through some different medical issues. Phyllis was a big tennis player, ended up getting a new hip, was very grateful for that. But she, the recovery was a little slower than she thought. And she really wanted to get back out on those tennis courts. They have adult children with grandchildren. They had a rental home over at Lake Tahoe that they really wanted to start spending some time with. So what had happened is one person had shown up at their door, made them an offer on one of their other properties, and it was too good to say no to. So they sold this property And as you can imagine, it was highly appreciated and it was a highly taxable event. So I met them as both grateful patients and worried folks who were getting ready to do their taxes. I proposed a flip charitable remainder trust with one of their other properties. That property, again, it was about $4.5 million, and they bought it for $800,000. They loved the idea of putting that into the trust and realizing that all of those taxes that they were going to have to pay for that other property they had sold, they could avoid. They also love the idea when I talked to them about, well, if we're going to sell the property within the trust, they had a trusted broker, a real estate broker they'd worked with for decades. Like that same broker can go ahead and sell that property. They can get their fee from this. And once those fees, once it had been liquidated within the trust and was going to be invested, their current financial team that they'd been using for many years and were very happy with could continue to now invest those funds. So it was increased business for these allied professionals that they'd been involved with forever. So again, the last person who was happy was their CPA, who realized that now that they were going to get a significant tax deduction with this, could apply some of that to mitigate the taxes from the sale of their other property. One other thing that had come up here, I mentioned they had two grown children, two grown daughters who had their own families. They both lived out of state. And they were doing very well, by the way. I pulled them into the conversation. They were in the room when we talked about this, and they didn't care about their inheritance. They said, that's fine. They were just excited that their parents were going to be doing this and being able to sort of stop doing so much work and come visit more. But this couple did have issues. They did want to not cut down the inheritance for their children at all. So what they did is utilize what I proposed is to use a portion of that income stream that they were going to get from this charitable trust and purchase a life insurance policy that would then benefit those children. So the inheritance that those children will get is not going to be a building that they're now going to have to take management over. They're just going to get the funds. So while they didn't care about the inheritance, the parents did. So they felt wonderful about not cutting down the inheritance for their children, their grandchildren, still getting this income, not having to deal with any more management, being able to get Phyllis back out on the tennis court a little bit more and get up to Tahoe where their vacation home was. And then this slide just shows, so Phyllis and Renee, they gave because they were grateful patients and they were moving into a new phase of their life where they wanted to be able to travel, they wanted to be able to see family more often. There are other issues out there for landlords, though, and this is just a list of some of the issues that your clients who are landlords may be running into. Being tired of managing their properties, having tenant issues, the properties needing seismic retrofitting, and then other legislative issues that may be coming up for them. I wanted to talk about this just because these gifts come in a variety of sizes. And as Bob had talked, that people can do these with a percentage of a property or with the whole property. They can do it with the whole property. It can benefit more than one charity. So these go from modest all the way up. And the Cusimano family has been, of course, very philanthropic, very connected to St. Joe's. And they recently did this gift of property with this residential or this commercial piece of property here. And if you look at the next slide, we are absolutely delighted that that gift is going to help name the Cusimano family urgent care. And that really goes back to the current campaign that Deborah had talked about at the beginning. And the family is just delighted. The more involved they've become, they're so involved with us, it's like they feel the joy. So that the joy of giving is certainly there. And knowing that entire family for generations to come is going to see that name and know that they are providing the top-notch healthcare for the Burbank service area. It's a feel-good moment. And this is really when I think what we all do feels wonderful, when we can be a part of facilitating something that not only helps these organizations, helps our clients, helps our donors, but just you feel the joy all the way around. You are definitely in that sweet spot of those three circles that Julie talked about. Ending, I just want to throw out there again the offer to be a resource to you. I certainly hope, my contact information will be here. I am delighted to answer any questions I can email you illustrations. You are not bothering me. Happy to answer any question that comes up. Doesn't have to be just for a Providence organization. Happy to help anybody. So I look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'm going to toss the baton back to Bob.
Thank you, Joe. So we have an opportunity here to review some possible questions that perhaps some of you have provided on some of the topics that we're discussing. And Deborah, do we have any questions that have come in?
Yes, Bob, we do, actually. Thank you. One of the first questions that we have is, what are some of the obstacles you find to charitable planning with your clients?
Okay, I'll start with that, and I imagine that Julie also has some thoughts. So I'll share some of mine, and then Julie can share some of her unique perspectives. Many times, some of the biggest obstacles are just a lack of awareness of what are some of the options that are available out there. Joe touched on this idea that a successful charitable plan has to be a win-win. And so I think sometimes one of the biggest obstacles is donors' belief that a charitable gift is going to be a charitable win and a loss for the donor. And I think sort of hitting that straight up and communicating with our clients that no, that's not how these things work. They work best when we're able to utilize these charitable tools to be blended with their particular asset mix, their family and estate planning goals and desires, to come up with some of these solutions that can really create some unique benefits and greatly enhance their lives. Joe touched on another scenario that he used in the gift of the apartment building. Sometimes the hesitation from the client standpoint is, well, if I'm giving something at the end of my life that's going to go to a charity, then I'm not giving that to my children. And I think, again, it's important to realize that we can also layer in many times life insurance to these charitable tools that can replace the wealth for those children that would otherwise go to the charities to a significant extent. And so, again, it's really about finding out what those families' goals and dreams are, and then being able to bring the level of expertise that we as advisors can have in our fields to come up with solutions that really are that home run solution for our clients. And
that's beautiful, Bob. And that actually gets to one of the other questions, which was, do the children of donors get upset? And I think you answered that.
Yeah, Julie, do you have any other thoughts on that particular topic?
I do. I will say it's a very real issue when children aren't aware of it and they find out that this huge amount of money in their mind has been given to someone else. And I think it's really important to involve the kids and to share with them what you're doing and how you're doing it. In this case, there's nothing lost for the kids. So the more you involve them, the better. And it's really a fun thing to do with them. But I will tell you, I've seen relationships seriously destroyed when they didn't involve the kids, and the kids were really upset. And particularly if they found out about it after the couple had passed or the mother or father had passed.
And I would bring up the whole idea of bringing in the next generation into the planning process that Julia shared is so important. I would echo that. I would imagine that the financial planners and CPAs that are watching this, or enrolled agents, that connection that you make with the next generation to sort of understand the vision that mom and dad had for their wealth, and to really allow those children to hopefully understand that, appreciate it, and ideally continue it, is really essential, and can really allow for some enhanced long-term benefits, not the least of which is the continued relationship many times with the advisor, with that next generation. As the wealth is transferred from mom and dad's generation to the children's generation, our ability to keep and make meaningful connections with that next generation usually is going to dictate whether or not you are able to continue that advisory role in that next generational transfer. So again, that open line of communication is really important and provides benefits for all involved.
Thank you, Bob. That's wonderful. And I would, and that actually gets to another one of the questions, which you just answered, but I wonder if you can speak even more broadly. The question is, in these scenarios, are advisors able to maintain their relationships with their clients? And I would open that up to the the real estate broker relationships, et cetera.
Yeah. And I'll, again, just kind of quickly share that, and then maybe Joe's got some insights to bring in as well. But yes, the benefit of this is that these solutions, these charitable remainder trusts, if it's a sale of a piece of property, the brokers are able to continue to participate in that sale. If it is a sale of stock in a liquidation event like we had with the UPS employee example, that financial planner was able to continue to play the role of managing those assets. And as I shared in that example, not only were they able to continue that relationship, but it actually improved their relationship scenario for that financial advisor, because that full portfolio was not reduced by the amount of capital gains taxes that would have been paid. And so again, in that scenario, it's not even just a matter of, in many instances, it being the same. It can actually be better for the advisor as well. And so whether it's a financial planner, whether it's an accountant who's providing the ongoing tax reporting services for the trust and the trust assets, all of those relationships can continue as we move forward with these assets and they pass these charitable remainder trusts. And so in that sense, I think it can provide significant benefits for the advisory community as well.
That's terrific. Joe, did you want to add anything?
Sure, I'll just start by saying ditto, but then I think that it goes even further than that, because when I'm talking to prospects about this, I want them to be at the most at ease as they possibly can. And so when we're talking about barriers from getting, to the actual signing of these arrangements, that's one of them. I think that it eases their way if you can say, no, you can use your own. If it's going to be your real estate broker, yes, your CPA is still going to be involved. Yes, your financial team can still go ahead and invest these dollars. I think it puts them at ease a bit. It's something that they're comfortable with these folks. They have these trusted relationships already. And I'm delighted. If they're happy with them, I'm happy with them. And then again, moving forward, I think that those financial teams, those allied professionals can then become part of my network. And I'm delighted to then work with them a bit too. And there may be other clients that they work with. And if they see me as a professional and they know that I'm not, I'm telling them everything straight and we're moving through this nice and smoothly, they may have others that they want to bring forward and be willing to discuss a gift like this with me.
Thank you, Joe. And another question that we have that has been answered partly, and I know that I suspect that you all will say that you will be happy to run scenarios. The question is, how do you calculate what benefits your clients will get using charitable gifts?
So there's actually specific software that I use to calculate these, or to put together these gift illustrations. And like I said when I was speaking earlier, we can sort of, if you give me some numbers, I'll be asking you for, fair market value, a cost basis of the asset, the donor's ages, your client's ages, if there are children involved, who's going to be the beneficiaries of these. I can run those numbers for you and I can email them over as a PDF, so that you can see that. And then I can walk you through over the phone to sort of explain how we get each of these numbers. And of course it's ballpark, but we can, you'll see how the actual gift works. Beautiful.
Thank you. And Julie, for you, I know we have discussed this previously, but can you talk a little bit about whether the beneficiary can be setting up a family foundation or a donor advised fund?
Yes, thank you, Deborah. Many people ask, well, I'd like to do the CRT. It seems like a good idea, and I know where I want to send it. However, what if they change? What if the leadership changed? What if something happens and I don't like it? Can I change that? And I also have people say, can I put it in a donor advised fund? Can I put it into our family foundation or create a family foundation with us? Absolutely, yes. It can go to any charitable entity, and it can go to multiple charitable entities. So really, I think the key is to think about, do you want to have flexibility? If you do, maybe put it into a donor advised fund and then dictate out of there the different places you want to have it go when you're getting close to that time. So yeah, tremendous amount of flexibility with this tool. I love it.
Wonderful. And that actually gets to the final question, which is, can I change my beneficiary organizations at the end?
Yes, and the answer to that is you absolutely can. As Julie mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of flexibility that can be created with these trusts. You can maintain the ability to change the trustee. You can maintain the ability to change the ultimate charitable beneficiary. So while it can be set up initially where it's irrevocable and none of those things are changed, it can also be set up so that the trustee and the remainder beneficiary, that is the charity, can be modified over the course of the life of the donor. And so that, again, sort of addresses some concerns that people have in creating something that's going to go on for a number of years, that as circumstances change, they wanted to have the ability to address those and make some modifications. And so that can absolutely be done.
Okay, thank you all. Those are all of our questions. Thank you for answering them. I will now pass it over to Bob for a quick review.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And so just to spend a couple minutes reviewing very briefly the concepts that we've been discussing, just to sort of hopefully enhance your comfort level with these concepts and increase perhaps the likelihood that you'll be addressing them with your clients. Charitable remainder trusts are really the key vehicle that we've discussed today, where we have a donor that is making a transfer into this irrevocable charitable trust, usually of a highly appreciated asset, and that transfer allows the charitable trust to liquidate the asset without capital gains tax liability, thereby allowing the full balance and value of that asset that's been donated to then be utilized to create an income stream back for that donor or for a designated individual that the donor has suggested up to a period of 20 years, or depending on the life of the age of the donor or the individual, it could be for their lifetime, just based on the actuarial tables that the IRS uses that would be determined at that time. So as you see in this slide, you've got a donor making a gift of a highly appreciated asset into the irrevocable trust. The distributions in the trust then turn around and are being provided back to the donor. There's income, a portion of those payments that are income to that donor. The remainder then, when the donor passes away, pass to a designated charity, a donor advised fund, a normal publicly supported charity like Providence St. Joseph's, a private foundation, or a combination of those. And the donor can keep flexible who the ultimate charitable beneficiary is. In other words, they can change it over the course of their life, like we discussed. And the next slide, you just see just some basic scenarios of maybe how some payouts would play out. Again, reminding you that these CRTs are tax-exempt entities. Again, the key piece, there's no capital gains on the transfers into the trust. And then when they sell the property, because it's a tax-exempt entity, there's no capital gains taxes paid by the entity. Again, as we mentioned, when the income is distributed back, there you've got some income that the donor will receive, and we've got some payout rates and kind of giving you an idea of if you had basically one life of a 72-year-old, what the payout would be on an annual basis, and what the payout would be if you had two lives. Again, this can be done for a husband and wife to make sure that there was an income stream that was guaranteed over the course of both of their lives. Again, a tremendous amount of flexibility that we can use in addressing these. As we move into the next slide, we again just summarize and highlight the differences between the charitable remainder annuity trust and the charitable remainder unit trust. Again, the annuity trust is almost like a fixed annuity. You've got a fixed dollar amount that goes in, and then a fixed dollar amount that is fixed as a percentage of the donation that's being paid each year, that's guaranteed over the course of the term of the trust. Again, which could be either the lifetime of the donor, or if the donor it wants to name another beneficiary that maybe is younger, for a fixed period of time up to 20 years. And the charitable remainder unit trust is, again, you've got a fixed income percentages happening, but the underlying asset values are being revalued annually, so that if you've got a money manager that's trying to grow that portfolio and it grows to be larger, that percentage is now being taken on a larger and larger pie, as what the goal is. And so that's how that plays out, and this slide kind of highlights some of those scenarios. And then the last summary slide that we have here is just a reminder to you of our charitable remainder trust right for my clients. And again, it kind of talks about some of the typical scenarios that you're playing out. You're looking in these scenarios when you have highly appreciated assets that are likely to incur a significant capital gains tax liability. and you want to then have an opportunity to utilize the full amount of that asset to create an income stream that is usually significantly higher than you would otherwise have the ability to do after having paid that capital gains tax. You have some charitable giving desires, and these charitable remainder trusts can many times allow for a much more significant gift to the charity than maybe would otherwise be allowed if it was simply going to be a life gift that was happening. So again, it avoids capital gains tax. It gives you an income stream that's frequently significantly more than you'd otherwise receive from dividends or certainly CD rates these days. You get significant income tax deductions. You have an opportunity to diversify assets like we saw with the UPS employee. And so you have many of these scenarios that can play out with these charitable remainder trusts that hopefully you, as the advisor watching this now, are excited about and are gaining a greater comfort level and sharing with your clients. Again, Joe is there as a resource for you to talk through some of these concepts. And with that, I'm just going to close my portion with just a quick discussion, since we're rapidly moving through 2020 and this crazy year. I wanted just to highlight a few things for you also to be thinking about as an advisor as it relates to charitable planning. Perhaps the biggest one is we've got an election happening in November that we all may know something about, have heard something a little bit about in the news. And it's important to keep in mind as advisors, right now we have the largest estate tax and gift tax exemption amounts that have been there in American history. We're close to $12 million of assets that can be passed either during life or upon your death, estate and gift tax free. If we have a change in the political leadership in the White House or in Congress, it's important for us as advisors to be aware of what some of those different options might be. And certainly with some of the tax proposals that have come out, I was looking at Joe Biden's tax planning proposals as it relates to estate tax. And at this point, he's advocating a elimination of the unlimited step-up in basis and a significant rollback of that estate tax exemption. In both of those scenarios, that obviously could result in significantly more transfer taxes for our clients. All that does is significantly enhance these planning tools and the benefit that we're now able to provide by using these charitable planning tools. The other thing is we've got a unique benefit here in 2020 that allows our clients to deduct up to 100% of their adjusted gross income as opposed to the typical 60% AGI limits. So that is something we could be mindful of in terms of making significant gifts for our clients as we're heading into the end of the year. They can deduct a significantly greater portion now than they could in prior years. And the last item, and just to be mindful, we've been talking about charitable remainder trusts all day today in our presentation, but there are also concepts like charitable lead trusts, which are very similar, but they simply switch the roles of the charitable beneficiary and the charitable donors. And so in the remainder trust, we've got the donor receiving the income stream and the remainder beneficiary being the charity. With the charitable lead trust, you flip those and the charity is receiving the income stream, and then many times it's the children of the donors, the family members of the donors that are receiving the remainder interest. And in today's low interest rate environment, charitable lead trusts have some unique benefits that can be used to provide an income benefit to charities, and then many times result in, depending upon the scenario, the value of the assets, the age of the donors, and the length of the trust term, can result in the assets then being distributed to children upon the passing of the donor, completely transfer tax free. And so that's another concept that, again, you can explore and Joe can bring to bear in conversations. If you can reach out to him, that's just another great tool that we can be mindful of. So just as we're winding down our presentation here today, some of these concepts can seem somewhat technical. I've tried to summarize them and communicate them as clearly as we can. But for anyone that wants to look a little further into some of the details of these different scenarios, we've got a slide deck that goes into some of the more specific and tax-specific issues that we've covered. And so it can be a resource to you to refer to and anytime in the future. And again, if you have questions that come up in specific scenarios or questions about concepts, you can reach out to Joe and he'll be able to help you out.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you for your trust, and Julie, Lyle Nesbit, for your sponsorship of this really important event. We hope everyone viewing has enjoyed it. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. And we hope that you will take us up on our offer to run numbers and talk through scenarios anytime. Our contact information is on the screen, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you so much, and take care.